this the way to the mountain?
It would seem.
If it isn't the bearded beaver in his sack seed, have I got something for you too?
Welcome everyone to episode 2 of Filmic Gaming Podcast. And my name is Cris. On the other side of the mic, actually I got 2 people on the other side of the mic today. I got Brendan in one corner.
Yes, hello guys. Thanks for having me back. I appreciate being here and I'm ready to jump into this conversation.
And then we got a special guest on the other side for the first time. Hopefully he comes back a lot more often. It's only been 2 episodes, but it's okay.
What's up, everybody? How you doing? I'm your co-host for this episode, the trio, Shogun, aka Show, aka Johnny 2 times. So how y'all doing? Hope y'all are good.
Johnny on the mic.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Glad to have you here, man. Glad to have you here to talk part 2 of everything that's expected and unexpected in God of War Ragnarok. Got a few messages off the last episode. A lot of people asking me to do a part 2, cover some of the things that we didn't get to cover in that first episode. So we're going to kick it right off, get right into it. And we're going to start with how Kratos got from Greek lands to the Norse lands. Obviously, there's a lot of theories out there on how that happened, a lot of rock solid ones. And there's also an explanation from Corey Barlog that we'll get into in a little bit. But we'll start off with Brendan because obviously we know that Brendan's an encyclopedia when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so basically from what I understand, there's a prequel novel, right, that takes place in between God of War 3 and God of War 4, and it doesn't straight out like tell you like, oh, this is how it happened. It's kind of described as more of like a dream-like sequence where basically Kratos is, walking north, kind of as, him and Mimir had briefly discussed in the game. He's walking north and on his way walking north, he's confronted by 3 wolves that are just like huge. They're like triple the size of him. They're these big wolves. And as one of them leaps out to like attack him, he kind of like is like, he gives like, his message to Thor when he saw Thor at the end of God of War 4. He was like, who are you? Basically kind of yells it out. And it winds up being Faye or Laufey, his bride-to-be. And so that is apparently how they meet, and apparently the wolves that are with them are Skull and Hati, and I don't know if they said there was 3, but apparently 2 of them are Skull and Hati, and one of them drags him all the way, apparently, from wherever he is in like the Greece land all the way up to the Norse world. Basically, we know that Tyr and Faye were, friends. They knew each other, obviously, with Tyr helping out the Jotuns. And so who's to say that he didn't, give her the same technology to hop between, the different realms as he was doing, as we saw earlier in the game, how he was able to hop between the different realms of the different worlds and view the different pantheons. So who's to say he didn't either travel with Faye or give her that same technology? And, they brought Kratos to the Norse lands in an effort to, ultimately help out, with the war, basically.
With the war, right? So that brings me to this point. At the end of God of War 3, right, there's something that Athena says. She says, actually, I don't think it's the end. I think it's the beginning of God of War 3. When you first get to the realm of Hades, you get to kind of come out of the river Styx, and Athena comes and approaches you. She says that you killing me has brought me to a higher existence. Right? So there's a theory going around that there is this form of higher existence that, these gods can attain that allows them to go from realm to realm, among other things. But one of the abilities is to go from realm to realm. Now, this is not to say that Athena made her way anywhere, right? Athena's still over there, right? She's doing her own thing. She pops up in Kratos' memories every now and then, or she shows herself to him every now and then. But in terms of him going from Greek lands to Norse land, it's obviously kind of maybe mirroring that kind of higher existence. Maybe by him doing that and his vengeance being done, maybe he attained it for a short period of time and was able to then travel to this other pantheon. But obviously that's just a theory. It's a pretty interesting theory, but it's just one of the lower theories on our ladder. Among the higher theories on our ladder is what Corey explained a few years back when he was first kind of introducing this theory of all the pantheons existing within the same sort of space, but separate. Right? There is a section in the game in Hell in God of War 4 2018 where I believe you have to kill a traveler, right? You fight that traveler, it's in a room, and there are murals in that room, right? That depict what seems to be a boat going from one realm to another. And above it in the sky are all these sort of galaxies. They're not looking like galaxies, they're kind of circles with like stars in them.
Yeah, like star looking almost.
Yeah, and they're kind of, you could kind of say that signifies all the different realms that they could go to. right? So that's my theory. My theory is that he found a way to attain this higher existence, and then on top of that, while he was traveling, was able to see all these different realms and kind of just picked one and settled down there. And obviously, he found Laufey and he fell in love, and whatever love is to Kratos, I don't know what love really means to him, bro.
And even if it happened that way, like, you know, I mean, if the Jotuns have the technology because of Tyr to travel between the different pantheons like that, then that would definitely explain in some way, you know, how he was able to make his way there. I mean, to me, I think that makes the most sense, you know, using using like the book, from what like that prequel novel explained and all that. I mean, to me anyway, that just seems like the most logical, like, you know, way it could have happened. But like, I feel like also they haven't like hard confirmed, you know, like, you know, exactly how it happened.
Definitely haven't. So, we're gonna get into God of War Ragnarok now, obviously, right? And what all those events that happened in the first God of War game entail for the next one. What are you most excited for when it comes to God of War Ragnarok?
All right, so I got two things. I want to run the fade with Thor, and then I got to run the fade with Odin if they're even gonna do that in Ragnarok.
Yeah, they definitely will. Odin's confirmed to be in the game.
I mean, he's confirmed
really?
to be in the game. He's confirmed to be in the game, but I don't necessarily know if they will fight him.
Well, I mean, think if it's going to be the last game in the, you know, the Norse pantheon, quote unquote, then like how else could they end it without? I mean, I don't know. Like,
what if Odin is just crazy powerful, and they just found a way to escape? Instead of kind of fighting him, what if the last act of the game is kind of just you trying to get away from him and get to that different pantheon? Obviously, there is a way for them to get, but Odin isn't aware of that way because it was only really known by Tyr, and now it's being learned by Mimir. We hope that Odin doesn't get his hands on Mimir or anything like that and then gains that knowledge, because then Odin's following you forever, bro. Yeah. I don't necessarily know if Kratos is strong enough to really beat it. There's a lot of theory out there that he's really not strong enough to beat Thor, but that's the first fight of the game. You kind of have to either not beat him, but you kind of have to get past that fight.
Yeah, you got to at least beat the shit out of him a little bit.
A little bit, right? But I think that theory is kind of unfounded, because you got to look back and look at because I've seen this discussion actually the last couple of weeks now that the PC version has come out, which, by the way, if you ever get a PC, bro, play that game on PC. The performance, everything, the way it looks.
I heard it's one of the few actual like really good PC ports upon like, you know, release. It's actually really good.
From PlayStation, it's got to be up there with the best. Now I'm also looking forward to the Uncharted one.
Me too.
Hopefully they nail that one, but for now we're just gonna stick with this. So obviously there's the idea that maybe Kratos isn't strong enough anymore, right? Because his fight with Boulder, you really see. If you remember that first fight.
Oh yeah, you were embodied, bro.
Yeah,
Boulder had the hands, bro. Like, he was a ragdoll.
But he still held his own against. I mean, I don't know if you remember that in that first fight. There's a part where they kind of hold hands, and they kind of do the old Dragon Ball Z, like, and they press into the ground, and the ground separates, you know, and it's like, oh shit, like, yo, they're really going at it. Like, but that's just Boulder. And then you see, like, he does things where he calls Thor a fool.
I have a plan.
You do?
Do not act so surprised.
No offense, brother, but I don't even think Thor with Mjolnir in hand could get through that much ice.
Then Thor is a fool.
This should be entertaining.
And because he doesn't know how to get the chisel out from under the ice, and he's like, I know how to do it. I'm just gonna drop this big ass hammer on the floor, and right. So there's the mental factor to it too, right? He's obviously a very seasoned war general. He's very smart, and he knows how to kind of gain his way to victory. And you also gotta go and look at he beat Zeus. Zeus has got to be, if not on par, he's got to be kind of just as strong as Odin could be. Yeah. I can't really disrespect Zeus just because we're in Norse mythology now. And now, now Odin's the strongest. No.
But Kratos had been out of the god fighting game for a few hundred years in between like killing Zeus and then fighting Baldur. You know, he'd been out of the game for a while, so it could have just taken him a little bit to get back into it.
Even his healing factor got slow, bro.
Yeah, he kind of heals slow after he finishes fighting Boulder. He's going to the house and he grabs the axe towards him and he kind of like leans on it and he breathes. You don't got that amount of time if you're fighting Thor to heal up.
You know, it's funny that you say that, because now I'm kind of comparing it to old man Logan. You saw how like when Logan got older, he got like slower, but he was still strong. But it's just he got
his claws were slow to come out. His healing factor was slowed.
Yeah, so
mean,
I feel like it's probably the same effect with Kratos. Now that he's getting older, he's a whole father. He's trying to change and shit. Now it's like you said, he hasn't been fighting consistently at least.
I feel like you're right. I feel like he's repressed his powers more so than lost them. So do you guys think that in a way Kratos might be a little naive to the ability that Atreus truly has as Loki and what he's really supposed to become? Because he kind of doesn't. I don't want to say he's ignoring it, but he's had to have thought by now, by the second game, I gotta watch my back, because I don't necessarily know what my son is capable of anymore. And this Loki person obviously seems to be very important to the Norse culture in terms of the prophecy that Laufey has put on the murals. And does he get to see, I don't remember, does he get to see the mural where Atreus is holding Kratos, or is it just Atreus that sees that?
No, only Kratos sees it. Remember, only he sees it because there's a piece of like a tarp or a flag.
Atreus walks away and it kind of flaps in the wind and it reveals itself to Kratos. Okay, so knowing that, right, he's got to have a failsafe in plan for whatever happens when it comes to Atreus, and the trust factor with Atreus has got to be, if it's not that it's super low, but it's got to be at an all-time low, because now he's kind of got this person in his hands who he no longer feels that he can mold him the way he wants to, because it might be out of his control when it comes to what happens in Ragnarok.
I mean, I think based on how like their relationship is at the end of God of War 4, like, I mean, they're in a good place. Like, they're in like a good like reconciliation. Like, oh, we're gonna progress, our father-son relationship. And I think yes, that Kratos is definitely naive to the potential of Atreus's Loki's godhood, especially because like I guess to what Kratos might view as being maybe a threat, or like even just power in terms of like being a god. He probably thinks of more in the physical sense, you know what I mean, and like the beating the shit out of her, the Spartan rage type stuff, more so than like Loki is. Loki is, at least in Norse myth, he's a trickster. He uses his head to like be maniacal and like be or do whatever he needs to do. Like, yes, he has some weapons and yes, he fights, but like he mostly manipulates others and like interweaves like relationships to cause chaos and stuff like that. So like, to that, that sort of power is probably very foreign to Kratos no matter what. So I think he doesn't understand. I mean, obviously we don't know fully what happened in the 3 years during Fimbulwinter between, God of War 4 and God of War Ragnarok. We don't really know what's happening there, and they could fill that in. Maybe something will happen in their relationship will be worse, but I think the relationship, I would hope, is in a good spot, especially with the way the last game ended, but then also like definitely Kratos is not going to be fully aware of like everything Atreus is going to be able to, and Loki, is going to be able to do going forward.
So Sho, how do you feel about Atreus being Loki? Do you feel like he's a dangerous person in Ragnarok, or do you feel he's just gonna kind of work his way through it and do his own thing and just be with Kratos?
So I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah, like regardless, Ragnarok is always a prophecy that happens. You can't stop it. So I feel like, sure, he could try and be Batman and make a fucking
Nightfall operation.
Yeah, like a contingency plan where it's like, all right, in case this happens, I got this. But I feel like with their prophecies, it might not really work, bro. And he's been around long enough, honestly, bro. And on top of that, remember there was that scene where they're fighting the elves, and basically he like saw a vision of him dying, and he saw his wife again. And when Atreus woke him up, he was like, "Why'd you bring me back?" So I feel like he wants to die in a sense, to an extent. Then you gotta take into account when that happened, Atreus' body, all of those elves.
That scene was crazy. Yeah, I had the same face Kratos had.
So yeah. So to be naive to your son's powers, like, yo, you forget you killed your whole pantheon. That is your son.
You have no idea. You son of a bitch!
Sickness. Fever has returned.
No! It hasn't.
Roy!
The coffin, the blood. The boy's sick, he needs Freya.
No!
Steady.
I'll be all right.
There you go, lad.
He has the capability to do that and more.
Yeah, I believe he's more powerful in a way
Yeah,
than
that
Kratos.
too.
Obviously not developed yet, but in his prime, I feel like Atreus is going to be way more powerful than Kratos, just because of the abilities and the knowledge that he's gonna have. He's so smart, you know. That kind of lends itself though to the trailer that they released. It seems to me that Kratos, after the events of because that dream that Atreus has, right? If you remember that part where Thor comes at the end of the game, Atreus mentions that it was a dream. That he was dreaming this, that Thor came down and that they had to fight him or whatever. But then it was 3 years later. You're like, oh shit, like Thor is here, but it was just a dream the whole time, right? So that kind of lends itself to the trailer in a way, because if you see the trailer, it kind of seems like Atreus wants to go out and figure out his prophecy, figure out his purpose, but Kratos has kind of kept him since the events of that last game in the quiet, in the dark, kind of refusing to let Loki or Atreus pick a war with the gods, is what he mentions in the trailer. He's like, I refuse to let you pick a war with the gods. And he's like, but I don't want to fight. I just want to talk. And he's like, and even if it leads to war, and it's like, you know, like it's kind of weird in the way that the way that Kratos is acting. I think Kratos is genuinely not just not terrified, but he's in the unknown when it comes to moving forward and letting Atreus find out who he is. He kind of doesn't want it to happen because
he wants to be on the defense.
Exactly. Like if you see, he's in a freaking cave, bro. Sick ass fur on his back. By the way, if we get the armor, that fucking shit is sick. I can't wait to get that. But he's kind of in a cave, and Atreus is going out and hunting full deer. By the way, he fucking picks the deer up and he's carrying it into the cave.
Did you notice in that scene in the trailer how like the horns on the deer are like right behind his head, looking just like Loki's horned helmet
I didn't notice
it's in
that,
the Norse myth, but also it's in the Norse myth, but it's also in the Marvel movies. But that's kind of like a little thing, like, oh shit, maybe he is like he is more embodying Loki than Atreus at this point, maybe.
There's so many subtleties that Santa Monica does, man, and it's crazy to think about. But let's move on to another kind of layer in the onion. Now we got Freya, right? Obviously, killing Boulder was probably the worst thing. I think it was the worst decision that Kratos ever made.
It was a bad decision, but like it made sense why he was doing it based on like all the themes, and like I said, I think on the last episode, the cycle of like the cycle of children killing their parents, and he's trying to stop the cycle. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to like make Atreus better and like make I don't know. He's trying to stop it.
I just feel like there's definitely hindsight 2020, right? There's definitely another way he could have gone about it. Like there's plenty of examples throughout literature, throughout shows, right? Let's go back to Avatar: The Last Airbender, right? In the final scene of that movie, you got to kill Ozai, right? The Fire Lord, right? Apparently everyone's telling him you have to kill him. There's no other way around it. You can't avoid it. But then all of a sudden, Aang has a meeting with the turtle god, basically, and he practically tells him that there's another way. You can take his powers away, right? Not to say that you can do that with Boulder, but I'm saying that there's always another way. When someone is really adamant about not killing, and they never really had that habit in their toolbox of just going to the kill, then there's always another way, and they'll usually find it. But with Kratos, there really isn't that kind of thought process. He's kind of very brute force in a way. It's like, if you don't listen to me and you don't want to change your ways, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna snap your neck. The mother really tried.
Simpler.
So that final scene is very powerful with Freya, because she kind of accepted what she did to Boulder, which Kratos will never understand, right?
Yeah.
He'll never understand what Freya did to Boulder in terms of taking his feeling away.
It's interesting that actually in actual like proper Norse mythology, like Boulder dies like fairly quickly after getting I guess his quote unquote curse of being, not feeling anything or not being hurt or not being able to be killed. Like once that happened to him in the actual like Norse myth, like he died fairly quickly after that because Loki tricked his brother into shooting a mistletoe arrow at him, and it happened. But like now we see in like the games, it's obviously, you know, that didn't happen because obviously Loki is not around at that point when he gets his, you know, invulnerability. So like we get to see him actually deal with that, not feeling anything for hundreds and hundreds of years,
Yeah.
or however long it had been, and then that obviously drives him insane, you know, which we
Mm-hmm.
don't see in the act. This is just another example of like, you know, the subtle changes of like Loki being taken out that I find very interesting, and how they,
Right.
you know, manipulate the act, and it makes complete sense with the game and the actual Norse myth how they changed it. Like I don't know, I love it.
So show.
I was gonna say, isn't that like the beginning of Ragnarok?
Yeah,
too? It
that's
starts
always
with
the
Baldur's
indicator.
death.
There's multiple indicators, but that is one of the
So-
and that's also why you know, in like in the God of War games, you know, Ragnarok is supposed to happen like hundreds of years in the future, but because they killed Baldur at that point, like, you know, it kind of like jump started things and made it all happen much
Right.
earlier.
And this goes back to my point of
Yeah.
the prophecy. You know what I mean? Because like it starts with his death, and now the thing is, Kratos probably don't know that's the beginning of the prophecy. You know what I'm saying? He only seen like the middle and the end of what's
Exactly.
supposed to happen.
And I don't think they're gonna be around necessarily for Ragnarok. Obviously, Ragnarok has started, but I feel like they're gonna find a way to escape and maybe go to another pantheon Tyr before Ragnarok happens, before the whole shebang happens, right? Maybe before Thor, Odin gets to them, or you know, obviously there's so many possibilities about what could happen. But I feel strongly about the fact that you're gonna see Odin, you're gonna fight Odin. Odin's gonna end up being too powerful, and you're gonna end up escaping maybe to Egyptian mythology.
Before we continue, it's funny that you say that because they have Egyptian, right? But then they also have Celtic. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go to the Egyptians, you know, because Assassin's Creed, Odyssey,
Valhalla.
what was it? No, not Odyssey.
Origins.
Origins.
was the
Yeah, the
Egyptian.
Egyptian.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Origins. They had the whole Egyptian thing, and then once that game dropped, they're trying to like push Egyptian mythology more out, but I guess it didn't do as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if like God of War tried to go to Egypt, but I would be surprised if they would go to Celtic because they don't do
That'd be like the
Celtic
pagan. That'd
mythology
be like the
like
pagan,
that, bro.
Oh
like
man.
that stuff. That'd be like when after the Norse people invaded like Scotland and pillaged their way through all the land. Have you played the game Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice?
Oh yeah.
Which is amazing game. I love that game. But that is
yes.
like all, you know, that game is all using like all like the Celtic, you know,
which is
gods.
very, very God of War-esque, if you ask me.
Yeah.
It's around that same. I think it's much darker than Norse mythology, and Norse mythology is dark. I feel like Norse mythology has a lot of colors in it. Celtic mythology is very gray and dark in terms of like everything that they kind of depict. Very dour, right? Even in the new Senua's Sacrifice that's coming out. Senua's Saga, that's coming out. If you saw the trailer, it's raining, it's dark,
great, yeah.
it's very ominous. It's just it's kind of perfect, I guess, in a way for where Kratos could go. So they have options. They have options of what they could do.
I've heard the rumblings. I've heard is the next, if they do, like, you know, they continue the series, the next pantheon's either going to be Egyptian or Aztec. That's like the rumblings that I've heard online.
Yeah.
But like, who knows at this point?
That's
really.
what I've heard
I'm not
too.
sure. Yeah.
So you can kind of take that with a grain of salt in terms of where they're gonna go next. But if you discuss Freya, I guess, so we can get back to that and the role she plays, she's out to kill Kratos. Like I said before, she's kind of biased in a way compared to Thor in terms of who she wants to kill. She really only wants to kill Kratos. She kind of has an adoration for Atreus. She kind of loves him in a way.
Father, she is here. It's so good to see you again. I knew you weren't dead.
Hello.
The kind of things that she does for him, like she said in the game, remind her of what she could have done for Boulder, right? So I don't really think she's gonna end up killing anyone because one, she can't touch Kratos, and two, I think Atreus is gonna end up appealing to her better nature.
Yeah, I hope so, especially because like Freya seems like she would be one to join the fight against Odin in the end too, especially because like, you know, she's a Vanir god, and like all the Aesir, which is like, you know, Odin and Thor and all of those guys, they're like, you know, the only reason she was ever with them is just because it was like the broker of peace between the Vanir and the Aesir, and so she really never actually loved him or liked him. So like I would think that once the shit hits the fan and you got to pick a side, like hopefully you'll be at a point where, you know, you didn't kill her already and she's able to help you.
Right. So yeah, that's how I feel about Freya. I really feel like she's dangerous in a way, but she's not super dangerous or anything. I just feel like she's gonna throw a little hissy fit in the beginning and
Well,
just
she's
kind
gonna
of
go
like,
grab her Valkyrie armor, right? Isn't that remember when you
yes,
after
yes.
Mimir tells you after you left him to go?
You've seen what Kratos has done to the Valkyrie, so I don't think that's gonna work
That's
out for
true.
her.
That's
So
true. That's true.
I mean, I've seen. I don't know if you guys follow any YouTube channels, but there's this one YouTube channel called Give Me God of War Plus, and this dude just fucking destroys the game. Like he just breaks the game, and he just released a video where he destroys. I forgot what who's the queen of the Valkyries again? I can't believe it's passing my mind.
I forget her name too. I think it starts with an S. I honestly don't remember. Sigrun. That was her name.
Sigrun. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, Sigrun.
So obviously Freya is different when it comes to that. She obviously has her Valkyrie armor. She has different abilities. She may be more powerful. So yeah, I really feel like Freya's just gonna throw a little hissy fit in the beginning, be manhandled by Kratos.
Yeah.
And then Atreus comes in and just kind of gives her a little pep talk and says, "Hey, look, we had no choice. He was gonna kill you." But at the same time, it wasn't Kratos' place. You know what I mean? It really is really no way around it. I understand the rage because it wasn't Kratos' place to make that decision. And I feel like this is something that he's learning along the way. You know, he really has this idea in his head that if he wants something to be done, he does it, right? In the first game he says, "We do as we please, boy." Right?
Yeah.
Like, and we don't ask questions. So it doesn't work like that, right? And I feel like he's learning that in a way, which is kind of why he regresses. Obviously, with the first game, he opens himself up back to the world and he starts exploring and doing all these things and embracing his combat again. But then I feel like he really regresses after the first game and he kind of goes into himself again. Now he doesn't want to pick a fight with the gods anymore. He kind of just wants to hide. But you don't have the protection spell anymore. So how is that even working out for them? Right?
Yeah.
It seems like Atreus is complaining that they've been hiding out in the fucking woods for years. And they just been doing. He doesn't want to do that anymore. He wants to find out who he is. So Freya may play a role in getting him to finally go back out again. And whatever the pathway is, whether they want to go find Tyr, then I feel like she's gonna be the cog to finally get him out.
Wait, but Tom, this whole time he's just been chilling, and then Boulder come knocking on the door. But now I say that to connect it to this, whereas like you said, he had no place on killing Boulder, right? But if I'm Kratos and I know you're gonna constantly come after me and my child, bro, and no one's doing anything to like handle you, why not? You know what I mean? Because clearly you're not gonna do it. No one has the balls to do it. Someone has to do it, and I'm not gonna be chased the whole time. I'm not gonna be running away from this guy that doesn't feel anything. It's pointless.
For real, it's like fighting a boss that's glitched out and the health don't go down.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yes, like it does. It's basically being like level 1 on Zelda and trying to fight Ganondorf. Like it's not gonna work,
bro. That's scary as fuck.
Breath of the Wild, when you first start the game, like you could go fight Ganondorf, but you know what I mean? Come on, nah, bro. I don't blame Kratos for doing it. And like you said, they gotta do better. Norse politics is completely different from like
they
Greek
still have
politics.
the same patricide kind of thing in a way, but it's not as prevalent as it is in Greek mythology, where it's like, god damn, yo, like can we have a son that doesn't kill his dad anywhere? Like, but that leads us into the next topic in terms of people who play outside factors who play a role. Brock and Sindri, we didn't get to touch on them in the first episode, but obviously they need to play a huge factor because they're where you get your weapons, they're where you get your upgrades, and they introduced a new dwarf in the trailer. Brendan, you want to talk on that?
Yeah, so they introduced Durland in the trailer, who, from what I've been able to, deduce, there's no actual like dwarf named Durland in Norse myth like there is a Brock and Sindri, but he's probably an amalgamation of two important dwarves, Dvalin or Durin. He's either based on one or both. I'm not really sure, but in the Norse myth, Durin is he's important because he's the second dwarf to like ever be born, and Dvalin is like known for like getting the dwarves in Svalderheim, whatever. I can't pronounce it. Yeah, Svartalheim, to like using the Norse runes to like craft weapons and like to like give weapons special abilities and stuff. And and also, the two dwarves together are credited for making one of the strongest weapons in Norse myth called Tyrfing, which I think might, if this is correct, could very well make an appearance in the game, because Tyrfing it's a cursed sword that is no matter like it's it's magic. It's one of the most powerful weapons ever made, at least in North myth. It's cursed basically to spill blood or kill someone every single time it's drawn, and it's also impossible to miss with. So I think if they introduce that blade in the game, that'd be pretty sick. Either, I mean, hopefully if you get to use it, if it's used against you, that'd be no good.
Wait, so you said the blade is cursed and you can never
like
miss
once
with
you
it
like
if you
if
draw
you're
it?
the person using the weapon, like it's apparently impossible to miss with, and whenever it's drawn, no matter what, someone dies.
Yo, that's so OP. How do you give a sword aimbot?
Yeah, you got a
Like,
point.
what,
You got a
bro?
point there. But more on Durland. Basically, also as we see in the trailer, when like there's a brief period of time you see them in Svartalheim, it looks very like a seafaring area. Basically, there's a lot of like boats, a lot of like maybe like a port town looking type stuff. And you also see on Durland's shoulder in the trailer, you see he has a baby squid, or maybe who knows, maybe it's a kraken, because krakens are big in myth anyway. But it looks like it to be like some sort of squid or octopus type creature,
Right.
and so there's a lot of like things hinting at like their society and the dwarves being people of the sea. And also, if you like in the trailer when they do the close up of Durland, if you like freeze the frame, there's like multiple things on him or in the background that suggests that he may have visited other pantheons of the gods in his travels, because if you on his belt there's a scroll that has like a dragon, that resembles like a dragon-looking head, that a lot of people, some people online that I've read have said it looks a lot like the Aztec god Quetzalcoatl. And there's another scroll on the other side of his belt that has a crocodile tooth on the end of it, that some people think might equate to the Egyptian pantheon. And there's also a bonsai tree behind him, and bonsai trees originate in China and like Chinese myth, and they're not at all related to Norse. I guess my next point actually is that how we see in the and like similar to the panels we were talking about before, how you see Tyr traveling in that ship to the other pantheons, right? We know that a ship was involved in Tyr's travel to the other pantheons. So there's a fairly good suggestion that maybe Durland was the one, sailing that ship for Tyr, because we know there's I would be, I wouldn't be surprised at all if there's some sort of connection between the two, and that Durland was maybe the one actually
crazy.
piloting that ship, and actually, maybe he, where Tyr was given artifacts from other realms, maybe Durland was the one stealing them, because dwarves are kind of known to be like notorious, like kind of thieves in a sense. So like, who knows, how he got it, but still, he collected some valuable wares from other realms.
What do you think he wants?
To test our patience.
When word gets out about my new shop, folks will finally come out of hiding. They'll be clawing all over each other just to catch a whiff of my wares. You watch.
Throughout his travels. And I mean, obviously this is all speculation, but that would be, it kind of makes sense and would be pretty awesome, I think.
Yeah, I think that's really good. So, obviously these dwarves, they make weapons, right? That's their main thing, and this new dwarf could make weapons of all different kinds of cultures. But Show, if there was one weapon that you would like to see Kratos have in the game, or even Atreus, right? Because I think Atreus having just his bow and arrow is a little bit mundane, If they just do that, maybe he gets another weapon too. If there's one weapon you wanted to see Kratos wield, it could be any type. What's one that you want to see?
Basically, 2 axes like a berserker. I feel like that'll fit like his fighting style, especially because he had the
kind of like Valhalla, like Assassin's Creed, when you had the 2 axes you could throw.
You already know he's used to dual wielding since Blades of Chaos, right? That's what they call it, right? So
Blades of Chaos,
he's already used to dual wielding, right? So I figured it would be cool to have him. He already has 1 axe, but since he has the Spartan Rage, I feel like it would be cool to be a berserker type, And then for Loki or Atreus, whatever you want to call him, everybody depicts him with daggers, I guess, because that's what they made the image of Loki now, having dual wield daggers.
I mean, maybe like a sick staff, right? Like a staff.
Yeah, that's
or
what I
a
was gonna say.
spear.
Maybe.
I can see a spear.
Something that helps him channel some magic. So we gotta go back too, because Atreus has this innate ability to speak to animals and to speak to beings around him. So do you think that maybe that becomes more interwoven in the combat? Maybe he can call certain animals or maybe certain companions to come in and attack, because before it was kind of just like soul renditions of these animals, right? He would send, I think it was boars, you had falcons, and I forgot the wolves, right?
Well, they showed in the trailer him riding there was a combat scene in the trailer, right? He was like riding like a stag or something, like some sort of like spiritual form. I would love to see, personally, I would love to see him wield some sort of like, great warhammer or something, like, maybe like a dual-handed warhammer type weapon that you can just like swing around, just like absolutely brutalize the fuck
Right.
out of people
Right.
with. Yeah, and I think that'd be pretty sick. And it also would be a good, way to spice up the
The
combat, I
blade of
guess, a little bit too.
Olympus, the blade of Olympus could count, but he kind of
True.
wielded that with one. He actually no, he dual wielded that because it was heavy, and his attacks were very like slow and strong. So maybe something like that could come through. But that bleeds into the fact that maybe we see the blade of Olympus in this game, and maybe because Durland has traveled through all these pantheons and he's gone to receive all these wares from everyone, maybe he found a way to just pick off the blade of Olympus from the Greek pantheon before it, completely went to shit.
Sorry to
You
cut
know,
you
he-
off, like, or even I wouldn't mind
No,
seeing
you do.
him touch his roots with like a Spartan blade or like a Spartan spear. How like how
Mhm.
300 they have those their
Right.
blades are crazy on 300, like Spartan swords was insane.
Right. Well, do you remember in God of War 3, one of his special attacks was a Spartan army would come down around him and they would shoot their spears out? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
In God of War 3, he had a special where you'd press R2 and it was a Spartan special, and they would come around with their shields the way they would in normal combat, and they would surround Kratos and they would poke their spears out, and then a whole bunch of arrows would fall down. So it looks like he has an ability to also summon some Spartans. We could see something like that in the next game. So it's really cool to see what kind of abilities they could come up with for Kratos. Because really, what he had in the first God of War was cool, but outside of Spartan Rage, there really wasn't anything. And the boulder throwing. So there really wasn't much that you could do outside of that. So I would really like to see them really go in depth with that. So we gotta let them go along with it, because like I said, they're gonna have 5 games.
Right.
They're not gonna bring everything out in one shot. So they're
And
definitely
even
gonna
with his
work their way
fighting
through it.
style, bro, I feel like on the new God of War, I was throwing hands just as much as I was using like the axe and like the blades.
I agree. It was
Mhm.
they did a good job with like the sensation of the hits and stuff. You know, what I mean, you
Oh,
really feel
yeah.
it. So it was
Mhm.
very fun to like just like fuck people up with your fists, or just the shield and like your fists.
Yep.
You know
So
what I mean? Just
imagine
go
like
down.
they
Yeah,
imagine they add some
it's
like
always good.
grapples and like drop kicks in the next game and shit. Yeah, I'll be for it. Just have him do some WWE moves on some motherfuckers real quick.
Like
Yeah,
a
like
suplex, right? Like a suplex
how
or
crazy that would
Batista
be to
bomb.
suplex a jogger, bro. That'll be so hard.
That'd be sick. He
That'll be
has
so
That'd be a
hard.
lot of fun.
he's doing this cool thing. He's doing this cool thing now where I don't know if you saw in the trailer, he's kind of using his axe like as a hook, as a fish hook. And he's then taking these beasts and he's just dragging them around in the air and slamming them on the floor. It's really cool, man. But the boss fights are something that are going to be to behold, because they showed a few of them. They don't seem like real boss fights. It just seems like the first time you encounter an enemy. God of War always does that. Whenever you encounter an enemy, yeah, like the troll, but then the troll shows up like 6 more times. Or even Medusa in the first game, in the first God of War, you face Medusa the first time, it kind of feels like a boss fight, but then she pops up. There's like 80 Medusas, you know what I mean? So I feel like in the trailer they showed a centaur in a way, a
Yes.
half horse, half man.
Yeah, I was about to say
And that's something from the Greek mythology. So that obviously made its way over to it.
Yeah,
Or
well,
they
you would
have it.
think, but there are they do have similar centaur type. I don't know if they explicitly call them centaurs, but there are similar like type creatures in Norse mythology. And also, actually, if you do, I don't know if you notice this in the trailer though, when if you freeze frame on that centaur, you can actually see that on like one of its legs, it actually has a bunch of runic symbols all over its body. So clearly,
Ooh.
it's been in
definitely
Norse. Yeah, so
Wow.
it's definitely Norse.
That's cool. And then you had that little kind of crocodile dragon type beast that couldn't
Yeah.
fly, but you obviously it landed on you, but Kratos uses the axe to keep its mouth from closing.
I think that's a
And
baby dragon. I think that's like a young, maybe like a baby dragon or
like a
something.
wormling kind of thing.
Yeah, something like that.
That's really cool, man. I'm really am excited for those boss fights, and who knows what the other boss fights are. I mean, there's a chance that, like you said in the last episode, we don't know if they're gonna introduce Hel, which is one of the daughters of
Yeah.
Anger, Boda, and Loki, but I could see that maybe being something where that's an added companion in a way. If they do introduce Fenrir, Hel, are there any other kids that they have besides those two?
No, it was just well, it means Jormungandr, Fenrir, and
Jormungandr,
Hel.
true.
They're the three kids.
Well, I'm not
of,
trying to fight
them.
Jormungandr,
Actually,
bro.
they do actually have another kid. I forget his name. Is an 8-legged horse that actually Odin rides. There's an 8-legged horse that Odin like has like enslaved and rides around, and it's also a child of
8-legged horse.
Yeah,
man.
yeah, Ingrid and
Norse
Loki.
mythology is crazy.
Yeah, dude, it's wild.
It's wild, man. I mean, they really chose a great mythology to start this path of going to all the other ones, right? You have to get a jumping off point, and I think Norse mythology was great. It's familiar in a way, different enough, but has
Real
that
hot
dark,
right now.
yeah, it has that dark feel to it where you could jump to, like you said, Celtic or even Aztec, and you can keep going from there. So, but
Yeah.
leaving all of that in its own bubble, let's jump over to Atreus. And obviously we're talking about the evolution of Kratos and his weapons, and we touched on Atreus too, but let's go more in depth in terms of how he's going to be during combat. It seems to be in the trailer that he's still going to have that same kind of mentality of just being an ancillary helper, just being in the background and just, you know, shooting, learning from Kratos, you know, shoot with efficiency, not quantity, right? And maybe he still has, you know, he has his abilities, but do you see maybe more sick hand-to-hand combat or better grappling? Because, you know, he used to jump on the back of Draugrs and use his bow to kind of choke him up and hold them while you then launch him up in the air. He used to do things like that. He's obviously much bigger now. He could do much more. Sho, what do you see him doing more of, maybe?
Well, I mean, it was cool to have a Marvel assist, you know, like Marvel's Capcom. It's cool to have that, you know, came in clutch when you're about to get hit. You're like, no, cancel. And I feel like since he's getting older, and obviously he has a way smaller frame, you know, he doesn't have the mass, obviously, at least not yet. But that don't mean he ain't about it, bro. Because I feel like his fighting style is gonna be completely different, where he's gonna be way more agile. And all right, think about it like an RPG. He's gonna be a rogue type character, high DPS, not a tank. You know, if they were to go forward, let's say, you know, they make a game about Atreus. After, let's say, Kratos dies and Atreus is like the new God of War or whatever, that whole playstyle is gonna change. I'm gonna look at it like the way Darksiders, how they did it, where they had, who was it? The first dude was like War, right? And he was like the heavy hitter, tanky. And then when you got to, what was it, Darksiders 2, you was Death or Famine, something like that.
It's one of those.
And, you know, his playstyle was completely different compared to War. And then on the third one was the chick, right?
And she had the two whips,
right.
the dual wielding
So
whips.
it's going to be like the same thing, transition of power, where you got Kratos being, you know, a berserker type, a rage type tank, and he could dish out a lot of damage, and just, you could feel the impact. But I feel like with Atreus, his playstyle will be more like, all right, I'm gonna hit him with a bleed damage, and I'm gonna fall back and come back in. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely exciting in terms of the direction they could take him, because he could do everything from, I believe he could still be strong. He could do everything from outside attacks with different kinds of elemental arrows, right? He already had 2 elements in the last game. He had light and he had his electricity arrows.
Yeah.
So, you know, he obviously should be gaining more kinds of arrows, but you kind of hope, I kind of want more oomph to his combat, because whenever you shot the arrows, you kind of didn't feel it the same way you felt the axe attacks, or the same way you felt, you know, the hand-to-hand combat. I want to press a button for Atreus. I want to feel, right? His specials were good, but I want to feel like maybe an explosion arrow or something like that, you know, something that comes around only every now and then because it has to recharge, that we could really deal some damage with. That would be really cool. And maybe,
I wouldn't be surprised if this game they let him, like, us play him as him for, like,
right?
you know, I'm in a sequence or two. Like, he's older now. He's probably, like, you know, a teenager or like close to 18 almost at this point, I think, or maybe he's like 16 or whatever they said he is. So, like, I could definitely see us maybe for at least a few portions of the game, you know, switching over to his side and maybe playing it
separated. He has to find his way to Kratos, or maybe Kratos. Honestly, I could see a situation where for a good portion of the game, we play as just Atreus, because maybe that fight with Thor puts Kratos out of commission, and he got to Dragon Ball Z this shit, and he got to go into a recovery chamber to really recover and come back. Yeah, right.
They pull Last of Us Part 2 and all of a sudden make us play as like a different character for the rest of the game.
No. Hey, we're gonna talk about that in another episode, but
I know. I want the foreshadow, baby.
Yes.
If they do that, of course they're gonna have to spoil Atreus and give him that like you said. You know, he's gonna need way more weapons besides like the bow and arrow. You're seeing it, so you're not supposed to feel it. It's just supposed to be like, all right, he got me. You know what I mean? Like he got my back type shit. But now I feel like,
I mean, obviously, as you upgrade them, his arrows do stagger damage, and they does it quicker. But yeah, I just want more of that. Maybe some more hand to hand. Now that he's bigger, he's got like a backhand or something, man. Give me something.
Let's say like he's older and he does have his own arsenal. Imagine a co-op God of War. That would be fun.
A drop in, drop out. Oh man,
that would be hard.
There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that Atreus can get. A lot of things that Kratos can get. There's also a lot of possible companion characters. We touched on it last time. There could be a portion where we play as Tyr. I touched on the fact that I would love to see them go the WB route and just let a few characters be playable, maybe through DLC after the game. But Santa Monica really isn't one for DLC portions after the games come out. They kind of just release the game, and that's pretty much it. All these predictions, they're gonna have to come to fruition at some point. We're gonna have to get the solid product soon, and when we get to it, it's gonna be amazing. But for now, all we can do is dream and speculate. And I feel like, we did a good job of that. We did a good job of letting the people know what the ideas and what the theories of many things out there are and what we think about it. So, I just wanted to thank you guys for joining us. This is episode 2 of Filmic Gaming Podcast. I'm Cris, Brendan.
Hey.
And for the first time, my special guest, who's going to be coming back very often, Cho, aka Johnny. It's supposed to be the other way around, but it's whatever.
Thank you for having me on the show. She's looking forward to it, and then you're already putting people on like, oh, yeah, he's gonna become frequently. Like, damn, what if they don't like me, bro? You can't just force me on the people.
if they responded okay to me, they'll respond well to you. Don't worry.
Oh yeah, but yeah, definitely happy to have you here, man. Happy to have you talk some God of War with me and Brendan, and we had a good time. This is pretty much it, I think, for the God of War segments. Next time we come back, we will be speaking on The Last of Us Part 2 and everything that comes along with that. So great to have you guys. And thank you for joining us and listening, and see you guys soon.